Hey everybody, my name is Brian and I am one half of the Popcast, and you are watching Pop Culture Unleashed, and we are talking about Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 5. I figured, you know what? We got the whole season, we might as well start doing these weekly episodes. I'm watching it anyways, and we're talking about it on the live show. Shane is way too far behind to do this with me, so I'll be doing it alone every week, Wednesday night, Thursday morning. I got to watch Season 5, Episode 5 a while ago, and I just watched it again right before recording this, just so that I can refresh myself and ask the hard questions, because there are some very difficult questions that I don't think will be answered. This is the last season, and in this episode, they offer up so many questions that will never be answered, and they just use really bad writing to get from place to place. And this is one of the episodes I really disliked. That doesn't mean that every episode's bad of this season, but this episode is especially egregious. All the many questions it offers up and never actually answers, and I don't think they ever plan on answering. And ultimately, this episode really didn't go anywhere. It didn't actually do anything. It just happened. It didn't move the story forward really at all. I mean, unless you think that moving the personal journey of Wilson Cruz, aka Hugh Culber, Dr. Culber's story forward at all mattered. But even then, it doesn't really matter. In fact, they call back to equally bad writing from 2 seasons ago when he died and they brought him back to life with mushroom magic or whatever. So let's just jump right into it and get this over with. By the way, I'm talking a lot of trash on this episode because this episode's bad. But not every episode this season is bad. You know, there are good episodes, or I guess better than usual episodes of Discovery in their final season. And I do like the character that is Captain Raynor, like a lot. I think that he is basically just us. Every time he walks in the room, he has to deal with all these emotional children. His reactions are pretty much my exact reaction every single time. So let's jump into it. All right, we open up with book. And I'm not going to have any sound here because I don't want to get copyright claimed to hell by Paramount. But he's looking at Moll and Lock. And I'm sorry, he's looking at Moll. And then he talks about his cat and how his cat saved his life or something. I don't know. So Moll and Lock disappeared and they couldn't figure out where they went. And remember, they're chasing Moll and Lock. And they get to this area of space where they disappeared. This is the weird part. It's an invisible wormhole that they say was caused by the burn. Remember the burn? That really stupid season 3, the burn. So they said the burn caused this wormhole, this invisible pulsating anus of a wormhole. Okay, I'll buy that. And they have to adjust their settings on their view screen to be able to see it. So here's my first question. And if anyone has answers to these questions, please let me know in the comments a reasonable answer. And you can't just say space magic or, oh, they're 900 years in the future. Invisible pulsating wormhole that opens up into like this special area of space that they get trapped in. Doesn't that mean that a ship can just accidentally hit the wormhole? Or is it and be sucked in? Or can you only get into the wormhole if you can see it, or what? And we're going to get to that pretty soon because we see a pretty insane ship inside there. So I want to know, can you only access it if you can see it? And if not, isn't that like the most dangerous space pothole of all time? And they brush past it so quickly, there isn't really time to even consider it. But what do you think? How do you feel about the giant invisible pulsating wormhole? I want to know. Next up, they look at the wormhole, they figure out what it is, or they don't, whatever. And Michael Burnham decides that she's going to leave the ship with Book. And she tells Captain Raynor that she's leaving the ship with Book to investigate. This is my first criticism. Why is Michael Burnham leaving the ship with her boyfriend to go investigate the wormhole and find Moll and Lock, leaving Captain Raynor in charge of which she's known for, 5 minutes? Just seems very foolish, very dangerous. At the very least, there needs to be some explanation as to why she and Book, specifically Book, have to be the ones that go. I don't understand that. Just seems foolish to me. What do you think? How do you feel about Michael Burnham taking her boyfriend, Book, to go investigate this super dangerous wormhole that they just discovered and find Moll and Lock while leaving Captain Raynor, who is effectively green behind the ears when it comes to this ship and this crew, in charge. So there's a bunch of emotional stuff. They talk about more dramatic, emotional stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? And, you know, they barely make it. Remember, they barely make it, and they're on a ship that is probably the most advanced ship that we've ever seen in Star Trek. And even then, it's ridiculously dangerous, and Book has to use all kinds of tricks. Him and Burnham have to figure out how to get in this thing without destroying their ship. They get into the wormhole, and they immediately see Moll and Lock's ship destroyed. So Moll and Lock did not make it, because they're not as smart as Book is. Here is the first crazy Easter egg. And I'll be honest, it did tickle me a little bit, except for then I had a lot of questions. They just happened to find the ISS Enterprise. And it's the same Enterprise from 900 years ago. It's the Terran version of the Enterprise from Strange New Worlds. When she gets on the bridge, she even says, that was my brother's station. So this is the Enterprise from 900 years ago plus, and somehow it was trapped in this portion of space inside the wormhole. Okay, first off, what is it, a 1 in trillion chance that just happens to be the ISS Enterprise that happens to be from her time, right? Also, it's from the Mirror Universe, and it's from 900 years ago. Oh, but wait, didn't you say the invisible wormhole thing was caused by the burn, which obviously had not happened 900 years ago? First off, how did it get there from the Mirror Universe? How did it get into that wormhole that was caused by the burn if the burn happened hundreds and hundreds of years after this ship existed? It makes no sense. This ship is from 900 years ago and from the Mirror Universe. And it's trapped inside of a wormhole that was created by the burn that happened hundreds and hundreds of years after it even existed. Okay, first problem. Anyone else see that issue? Canon that they put out not even 15 minutes ago is already being broken by this Easter egg. That's what it is. It's like an Easter egg. They wanted to show you the Enterprise so that fans would be like, oh, the Enterprise, look, it's cool, the Enterprise. Well, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So the Enterprise is pretty beat up, but for the most part, it is intact. And they're going to board the Enterprise. All right, now, let's go back to Discovery. Drama. Tilly's trying to figure something out. She goes in there. Colbert starts talking about his feelings. Whatever. More feelings. She doesn't feel adequate. Stamets is trying to encourage her. Finally, an end to the feelings, because Captain Raynor comes in and just instantly gets down to business. Once again, I like this character a lot because he's pretty much me. His entire demeanor is exactly how I feel every single time he has to interact with this crew. There's so much filler this episode, it's insane. There's a lot of filler. We're going to get past. Okay, so now they're on the bridge of the ISS Enterprise, the Terran Enterprise. Book has this hack that he figures out. They're trying to scan for Moll and Lock by scanning their own quantum signature, because they're on a mirror version of the Enterprise, which means that anything from this universe that's on the Enterprise, they'll be able to scan for. They figure it out really quickly because Book, again, is a genius, and he has like a hack or whatever that sets him up. And they also figure out the crew abandoned ship, and this is important, all the escape pods are gone. So the crew abandoned ship. So they establish all the escape pods are gone and that the crew abandoned the ship. Please remember that. I'm sorry, I gotta go back to the abandoned ship thing. How did they abandon the ship? So Book, in his super advanced starship and all of his tricks, and it's tiny, barely made it in to the wormhole. Moll and Lock's ship didn't make it. So questions upon questions upon questions. The Enterprise from the Mirror Universe, how did it get here? How did the entire Enterprise get to our universe? Number one. Number two, how did it end up in the wormhole that they established this episode was created by a burn that happened hundreds and hundreds of years after that ship existed? And number three, remember, this ship is ancient, right? From their perspective, it's ancient. It's 900 years old. Like they even said, I hope they got out of the wormhole. But how? There's no way the escape pods made it out of the wormhole from a ship that's over 900 years old. So remember this. Please remember this part. They abandoned the ship, and it makes no sense. Also, this is pretty important. They imply that one of the scientists that is hiding these clues hid the clue on the Enterprise in the pulsating invisible wormhole. In fact, book even says, wouldn't it be a great hiding place? Because you can't find it, and you have to have the right settings to even see it. Whatever. Except for, if the burn caused the wormhole, how did the scientist, hundreds of years before the wormhole, before the burn, know that even existed? And then how did the ship get in there? So how did the ship get in there? How did the scientists know it even existed when they were hiding their clues hundreds of years before the burn? They're breaking their own canon 15 minutes ago and in the same season, all in one episode. It's incredible. So this is when we figure out, it's pretty cool. This is when we figure out that Saru, I mean, I guess it's sort of cool. Like, I'm a fan of Saru. I've always have been. Maybe I just like Doug Jones. I don't know. But they do figure out that Saru was the captain of the ship. Because, of course, Saru was the captain of the ship. And he was a slave that took control and took a bunch of people to escape the Terran Empire. Okay. Still doesn't answer how they got to our universe and how they got into the wormhole that would have been created by the burn that happened hundreds and hundreds of years after they existed. But whatever. So they do find Moll and Lock, and I'm just going to skip to that part. Moll and Lock have this really cool thing where they use the sick bay's hollow emitters to create like multiple versions of themselves, and you know, they have a firefight. That's when they figure out that Lock is Breen. And here we go. That's cool. He's Breen. Except for during the flight, remember, the Breen wear like the full suits and the masks. We've always assumed that they have issues with environmental things, right? And that's why they need those suits to live in outside of their whatever their native atmosphere is or whatever. And that makes sense because there's a flashback here. And I'm going to jump to look at it. Remember, just look at Locke's face. That's what a Breen looks like, right? Except for it's not. Because during the flashback, the story they tell is that Locke is a Breen. He's of like royal descent. He got in trouble, whatever. So he's working in this lowly position. And Moll is a courier delivering dilithium. And so she's there often delivering dilithium because it's, you know, during the burn, blah, blah, blah. There he is. So the Breen's face looks like that. It makes complete sense that the Breen look like that, and they have to wear the suit and the mask in order to live in our outside of their atmosphere, right? Except for, remember what his face looked like. So his face is all translucent there, but then on the Enterprise, his face is not translucent. It's solid. And maybe it's a nitpicky thing, but I don't understand why they would go out of their way to make their face look like this, which looks cool. That's what a Breen should look like. And then they make him look like his face is solid and he's wearing makeup or whatever. Doesn't make any sense. So they fall in love, whatever. Oh, before then, they had like this Mexican standoff, and the shields trapped Locke and Michael into the sickbay, and now Book and Moll have to go help them get out. Of course, they have to work together, and while they're working together, they have to, you know, they have dramatic things. She talks about her past and how her dad sucked, and her mom had to work in the mines, and she's sad and she's angry, and has had a hard life, and she's got that tear coming down her face, and emotion. Michael and Locke are talking out. Again, look at his face. I would love an answer on that. Well, I don't know why his face is solid in here, but not in the flashback, but I don't know. Tell me why his face. I'm assuming it had something to do with him taking the mask off. That's what allows his face to like sort of like solidify. But that begs the question as to why they're wearing the mask in the first place. So if they don't need the mask to live, why do they all wear the masks? Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know. That's what the Breen's face looks like. That's his face. I don't understand. Someone in the comments explain this to me. So they're gonna use the Enterprise to get out of the wormhole. I don't know what happened to. I forgot what happened to Book's ship. Someone explain that to me. Why? Yeah, I forgot what happened to Book's ship. Why couldn't they get on Book's ship again? There was a reason why they couldn't get on Book's ship. Whatever the reason is, they have to use the Enterprise to get out. But remember, the wormhole is too small for the giant Enterprise. So Michael Burnham has this great idea to use the tractor beam. And the tractor beam, it shoots out, it like impulses. See that? And the pulses are basically Morse code. And it gives Captain Raynor this very short message that's very specific to Captain Raynor, and apparently something that Michael learned in his extremely brief time with him that allows him to know that they're bringing a larger ship out and that they need to make the wormhole bigger and extend how long it stays open. Apparently, Captain Raynor puts a lot of the effort onto the non-binary kid. I'm forgetting their name. The kid figures it out. Voila. They get the Enterprise out. Because of course. Remember, there are a lot of smart people there. I'm not sure why we're relying on this ensign, but whatever. Who cares? Who cares? Doesn't matter. We know they're going to get out. Michael Burnham has plot armor. You can't finish the season with Michael Burnham dying in the 5th episode. We know that. So they get out. You know, it's this whole thing. They almost didn't make it, but they made it. They go, hey, someone's firing. This is why you remember. All the escape pods were gone. They abandoned ship. But Michael Burnham goes, wait a minute. There's a Terran war pod attached to sickbay. Whatever the hell that is. What is a Terran war pod? Apparently it's some kind of 2-man shuttle that is randomly and very conveniently attached to sickbay, and it has a warp drive. It has a warp drive. They didn't have to go through all this. They could have all gotten in that Terran war pod and left the pulsating wormhole anus. But we had to go through all this effort for some reason. So Moll and Lock, they get in their very conveniently located Terran war pod that also has a warp drive. I don't know why, but they had to have some way for Moll and Lock to get off the ship, and so they can keep this season going, because they're chasing Moll and Lock while chasing the clues, so they can be first to get the technology, you know, from the progenitors or whatever they were called. They're all back on Discovery. So she's like casually, you know, strolling down the corridor with Captain Raynor. By the way, side note, we see them using like the double tap personal teleporters everywhere. If I had a personal teleporter, I would never walk. I don't know. That's just me. They did say that apparently the Terran crew did make it out, and that one of the junior science officers that was on the ISS Enterprise became one of the scientists that went back and hid the clue on that ship. And all that is fine, except for they established that the burn is what caused the wormhole. So that timeline adds up, where you say that scientist was one of the, you know, she was a junior scientist on board the ISS Enterprise. Somehow the crew of the Enterprise made it out of the wormhole in their old vintage escape pods. And one of those scientists one of the junior science officers became one of the scientists that hid the clue. That's how they knew where the ship was. Cool. Except for you established when you discovered the wormhole that it was caused by the burn. If you just take that line out, everything adds, you know, not everything. The timeline adds up at the very least. The burn comment really threw the entire timeline just out the door. Regardless, that's what we're at next. So they have the next clue, or they have part of it, and now they're going to work on the next clue and then chase Moll and Lock to the next planet or whatever, so they can find another part of the technology, or they could get to the next clue that gets them to the technology or whatever. This episode was egregious. It was not good. However, next week's episode is not bad. If you're watching this right now, you're like, why should I be watching this? Well, maybe you're watching it because you're a Star Trek fan and you watch anything Star Trek. Maybe you're watching it like me because some episodes are pretty good and you want to see how they finally end this failed experiment that is Star Trek Discovery. It's the worst Star Trek show I've ever seen, but this is the best season of the worst show, and it's the last season. So I'm watching because I'm genuinely curious as to how they attempt to bring this thing home. That said, there are some good episodes of this season. There's some bad episodes, there's some good episodes. This is not a good episode. But next week's episode, which I've now watched twice, is actually a pretty good episode. In fact, spoiler alert, there is a reference to our favorite Denobulan's doctor from the Enterprise. So please come back next week, the same time, sometime after midnight on Wednesday, early morning Thursday, and I'll have my entire breakdown. So, like and subscribe and hit the alerts so that you don't miss next week's episode, which is better than this episode. There's problems, but it's definitely better. And also, come back later today at 4 p.m. Shane and I will be doing our live show. We'll be talking a little bit about Discovery, also Deadpool and Wolverine, and a bunch of other fun topics. So, listen, come back. Come and watch the live show. And that's it. All right, I'll see you then.